Well, Democrats are celebrating significant election victories in Kentucky and Virginia. State Attorney General Andy Beshear is claiming victory in Kentucky's governor's race. He faced Republican Governor Matt Bevin. That race is still officially too close to call, but Beshear leads by about 5,000 votes. Democrats also took control of Virginia legislature yesterday for the first time in more than 2 decades. Natalie Brand has more on the election results.
Democrat Andy Beshear held a news conference Wednesday about his plans for Kentucky after claiming victory in the state's governor's race.
It's time to come together and to get to work.
Beshear leads incumbent Republican Governor Matt Bevin by 5,000 votes. The race is still officially too close to call, and Bevin isn't ready to throw in the towel.
We are not conceding this race by any stretch.
President Trump, who won Kentucky by 30 points in 2016, traveled there on election eve to help Bevin, whose policies were unpopular in the state.
If you lose, they're going to say Trump suffered the greatest defeat in the history of the world. This was the greatest. You can't let that happen to me.
Republicans did win every other statewide race in Kentucky, including Daniel Cameron, who becomes the state's first African-American attorney general. President Trump pointed to those victories in a tweet Wednesday, saying, based on the Kentucky results, Mitch McConnell will win big in Kentucky next year. But the governor's race in Kentucky and state legislative races in Virginia point to President Trump's vulnerabilities with suburban voters. In Virginia, Democrats took full control of the state government for the first time in nearly 25 years. Democratic Party Chairman Tom Perez says the party's message of unity is resonating in the suburbs.
Prince William County embodies the challenges that Donald Trump and his politics of division are confronting in today's world. It is the quintessential suburb.
The president is not done campaigning. He heads to Louisiana tonight ahead of the November 16 runoff election in that state's governor's race. Natalie Brand, CBS News, the White House.
I want to bring in Joel Payne in Washington and Joseph Pinion here on set. Joel's a Democratic strategist and a former campaign aide for Hillary Clinton. Joseph is a Republican strategist. Joseph and Joel, I want to get you both to weigh in what your big takeaway was from last night. Joseph, why don't we start here on set with you?
Yeah, I mean, I think realistically this, Democrats are going to try to say this is an indication of where 2020 is headed. Republicans are going to say this has nothing to do with 2020. I think the truth really lies somewhere in the middle. I think realistically, these off-year elections are more a prediction of where the future of the party is going to be. I think Republicans have known since 2012 when we had the growth and opportunity kind of postmortem on the Romney campaign, where we knew that we had to make progress in the suburbs. We knew we had to do better with black and brown people. I think in Kentucky, we see it even in Kentucky, there are suburbs and we have problems there. All of those things are really why we're having the problems we're facing today.
Joel?
Rena, I take my cue from folks like Matt Bevin and Donald Trump, who told you that they were going to make this about impeachment, about Donald Trump, and they were going to nationalize that race in Kentucky. And I think that backfired on them. They tried to create an environment where the issue of impeachment was toxic for Democrats, and it didn't work. And I do think that there's some egg on the face of Donald Trump, Matt Bevin, and other Republicans who felt like they could hang this around Democrats' neck. They clearly can't, and I think that's an indication of how Republicans are going to have to adjust and shift their posture around impeachment as that heats up and as more revelations come to the front. I'd also point out in a state like Mississippi, yes, Jim Hood lost and Republicans swept through that state. But if you look at the numbers, like Mississippi was a plus 18 Trump state just 3 years ago, and Jim Hood closed that to within 10 points. So there's a lot of negative warning signs out there for Republicans that if I was a Republican strategist or consultant today, I'd be really concerned about what's going to happen a year from today.
I want to ask you, Joseph, to Joel's point about Mississippi, clearly red state. I think it was something like a 5-point difference, if I'm not mistaken. 5 points is not a whole lot in a deeply red state, no?
You should not have to work this hard to try to win elections in Kentucky and Mississippi. If you're a Republican, that should be concerning. And I think, again, when you start talking about party building, where are we going to be as a party 5 years from now, 10 years from now? We have to make some hard choices. But I think the notion that somehow that this is going to be a referendum on the impeachment strategy, to me, is ludicrous. I think that's
Why do you say that's ludicrous?
Because really, you look at the polls right now, you have over 50% of Americans, even if they agree with impeachment, also believe that Democrats have taken the wrong strategy on impeachment. You look at the fact right now that, like most presidents, whether you're talking about Trump, whether you're talking about Clinton, whether you're talking about Obama, all these presidents have the ability to save themselves when they, in fact, are on the ballot. But all these other elections in the middle, Trump's coattails were never that long. So I think, again, to try to make this a referendum on Trump, you can't make that takeaway and a direct correlation.
Joel, when you look sort of at these other races, I mean, you're looking at Kentucky Kentucky, for instance, the president won Kentucky, right, by something like 30 points last go round,
so
right?
Second biggest margin. Second biggest margin.
Second biggest margin. So it's a key state to look at here. But when you look at, Andy Beshear, the victory over Republican Matt Bevin, Republicans still won 5 other state races there, and by something like more than a dozen points, Joel. Should the Democratic Party be concerned about that?
Look, I'm a Democratic strategist, and Joseph is a political professional too. We run scared. Okay, this is what we do. Even in good times, we run scared. But what I'd be concerned about if I was a Republican is I'd look a level deeper. Look at those numbers in some of those suburbs, some of those bedroom suburbs outside of Cincinnati and outside of Louisville and places like Louisville and Lexington, where Beshear was able to pad his lead. That's why he won. He won because he was able to get people out in places where Democrats traditionally, or at least in the last few cycles, have not performed quite as well. The voter interest in this election in Kentucky was higher. There were over 900,000 people who voted in 2015. That number was 1.4 million this time. So there are a lot of indicators out there that suggest that Republicans have to be concerned about a really engaged electorate now that is concerned about the direction that President Trump is moving the country in.
And to be honest, when we do these post-election wrap-ups, I don't know how much you can really tell. 12 months is an eternity in politics. And so much also rests on the economy as well. Joseph, you and I were talking about, has anybody taken a look at your 401ks recently? I happened to do it this weekend, and it was a pleasant surprise. Does the president have a lot to be concerned about if this economy tanks?
Yeah, I think, again, the thin line to re-election for President Trump rests on the economy. He has tethered himself to the Dow. I think in realistic terms, if the economy is going strong, most of the time people going to the polls are going to say, is my 401k up? Do I have a job today? 6 million Americans had no job when he got elected. They have jobs today. Those are going to be real factors. And I think, again, to the point of Democrats looking at takeaways, I think the takeaway that they're not talking about and what Republicans will lean into is the fact that the type of Democrat that was able to be successful in Kentucky is not the type of Democrat that's trying to vie for the nomination right now to be president. And so again, you talk about, yes, they were successful in places like Mississippi and Kentucky, but the types of candidates they're running in Kentucky and Mississippi are not the types of candidates that are running nationally, and what they ran on is not what the Democrats are running on for this presidential cycle.
Joel, one takeaway that it's hard for anyone to ignore, a big win for Democrats. They were able to capture control of Virginia's House of Delegates, the state Senate. How significant is this for Democrats?
Well, I think that we can stop calling Virginia a purple state. I think it's pretty well defined now as a blue state, and it's been something that's been in progress. And the model that Democrats have followed in Virginia is something that I think they're hoping to follow in places like Georgia, and places like Colorado, and places like Arizona, where Democrats have been trending in the right direction. So that was the Virginia of yesteryear. Those states now become the frontline targets for Democrats to turn from red to purple to blue going forward. I think you're going to see Democrats try to take that playbook in Virginia of micro-targeting and winning in state delegate houses and winning those local elections and really building up a bench. You're going to see them replicate that around the country.
And Joel, when you look at it, what do you think the takeaway is for the Democratic Party? Where do they need you say you run scared, where do you need to run harder?
Well, I think what Democrats are realizing is that where President Trump has really started to lose a lot of support is, again, in those suburb communities, those places that, last time around in 2016, President Trump actually performed pretty well in those places where independents and moderates exist. That's where Democrats have to focus. So Joseph is right that Democrats have to be competitive there. But I think that the type of candidate that Democrats can run at the top of the ticket, I think a number of the candidates, I think 4 or 5 of those candidates, Buttigieg, Warren, Joe Biden, I think Kamala Harris, a lot of those candidates could be very competitive in those places.
What's the takeaway for Republicans? Where do they need to run harder?
I think really for Republicans, we need to make sure that we're talking to those suburbans, we're talking to women, we're talking to those individuals who feel like they might be a little alienated. But I think, again, the strategy that the Democrats have taken nationally actually puts Republicans in a really good place when you look at the fact that, again, you have Pete Buttigieg trying to pack the courts, you have Elizabeth Warren with $20 trillion fantasies. Most blue-collar Americans know there's no such thing as a free lunch. And I think as long as Democrats keep preaching these kind of fantastical kind of endowments that they're going to give out to Americans, I think Republicans can just say that what they're trying to tell you is really a bag of bunk.
All right,
Rena, I have to. Can I tease Joseph for a second? Elizabeth Warren is $20 trillion, but at least Mexico's not going to pay for it, right?
Well, I will just say that again. In politics, things get messy. Yes, obviously, Mexico's not paying for the wall, hasn't paid for the wall, but I think most Americans heard the wall and they heard security. And I think as long as Democrats refuse to acknowledge the fact that Americans want to feel secure in their own homes, it's going to be a replay of what happened at the Jacob Javits Center in 2016.
Oh, boy. Well, we're going to have to leave it there. Joseph Pinion, Joel Payne, really appreciate you both for joining us
Thank you so much.
post-mortem after the elections. Thanks so much.
Thanks.